I want to thank everybody for being on this call today. We took last week off. We rescheduled both of our events to honor Black Lives Matter, to honor all of the people who have been needlessly killed and discriminated against. And it was a week of us just being able to give some space to that and to other conversations that needed to happen. So I just want to make mention that we've made a couple of announcements over this last week. If you haven't seen them, we do stand behind this movement, and we are going to be doing a good initiative. You'll be starting to see probably this week, some things that we're doing differently. We have tried, and we have not done enough. So we are making a pledge to do a lot more. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to let Scott intro. I'm going to intro Scott.
In the past 2 weeks, Corey has heard from 8 students of his who have sold scripts and pitches. Despite the current health crisis, the industry is still very much open for business. But to sell a project, it's got to be the right one. And just to give an example of how the industry is still going, I had a pitch meeting with a network today that got pushed back. So if that's not status quo for the industry is still up and running and as busy as always, I don't know what is. So Corey, you're going to hear from a great presenter and speaker. I've had the honor and privilege to work with Corey thanks to the ISA on a number of occasions. We actually first met Corey at the TV weekend the ISA held in Chicago 3 years, maybe 4 years ago. But Corey is an award-winning playwright and screenwriter who has written projects for Ridley Scott, Wolfgang, Petersen, Harrison Ford, Meg Ryan, Julia Roberts, John Travolta, Warner Brothers, Universal, 27. If you've heard of a large, significant, prestigious production company, Corey has some level of connection to them. And all of those up-and-comers that were previously listed. His students and clients have gone on to sell scripts and pitches to Warner, Paramount, Sony, Disney, Fox, MGM, A24, which is one of the coolest production companies right now doing some great stuff, Nickelodeon, friend of the ISA, Universal, Showtime, NBC, AMC, MTV, Amazon, FX, Hulu, Netflix, HBO. And his writers have been staffed on an incredible number of shows. I'm just going to give a couple of my very favorite shows that happen to have some of his students on it. Stranger Things, Community, which is killing it on Netflix right now, and BoJack Horseman, but also, I mean, Orange is the New Black, Mozart in the Jungle, just so many. So it's going to be really interesting and fun to hear from Corey today as we hear about, I guess, what to expect in this climate. So Corey, please come on and join us.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, ISA, for having me here. And first and foremost, I hope everybody is healthy and safe. And I know that the current health crisis is impacting on everybody. And for some people, it's incredibly inconvenient. For some people, it is psychologically and emotionally damaging. And I know for some people, it's just outright devastating. And my heart goes out for wherever you are on that spectrum. And I just think it's important that we all realize that this is going to end. And the future is going to be brighter than the past. And I'm not trying to be just Mr. Optimistic. It's just, there's always a lot of good that comes from tragedy. And I'm going to focus this on writing. And as you already heard, the industry has been open for business. And more importantly, I just talked with the head of Hulu yesterday. So as I'm sure you all know, right now, the bottleneck is with production. So we are literally living the longest development cycle in the history of entertainment industry, which is both good and really bad in certain ways. But in the coming weeks or months, but probably weeks, they're going to start to be able to do production. And as that happens, their nightmare, everybody's nightmare, is as they start moving things from development to production, there's going to be a massive shortfall of new stuff in development. And what I'm hearing across the board from agents, managers, and executives is we're not going to be able to get our hands on enough really great scripts when this is over. Not enough. The demand will far exceed the supply. So a lot of industries are devastated, and I know some of you lost your jobs, lost your businesses, or hanging on by your fingernails. One good thing is that the writing industry, for those of you who make your living as a writer, or for those of you who are making that investment to make your living as a writer, it's going to be a really good industry to be in. Before the current health crisis, it was the best time to be a writer. And most everyone I talk to say when this health crisis is over, it's going to be an even better time to be a writer.
Why do people write spec scripts? They tend to write spec scripts because A, they would like to sell that script, or you write a spec script if you don't currently have a career to launch a career. And so even if the script doesn't sell, it can get you noticed, it can get you attention, it can get you meetings, and ultimately, hopefully, it can get you representation. It can get you staffed as a writing sample on an existing show, which is often the way TV writers, break into the business, is getting staffed on an existing show. It can get you a feature assignment, and it can also, the writing sample can get you pitch meetings. So people read the script, they love it, they would have loved to have bought it, but for a variety of reasons they can't, but they truly want to be in business with you, so they'll invite you in to pitch. And it is generally easier to sell a pitch than a spec script for a variety of reasons, so which we can get into later. But the point I wanted to make is the reason people write spec scripts is to sell that script or to launch their career, or, and I work with a lot of writers like this, there are a lot of writers who break into the business and they're working on a very low level network show, or they're working on a kid show, and that's not to be condescending or judgmental. First of all, we all break in the business any way we can, and anyone who's making their living, as a writer, hats off to them. But most people who are working on lower level shows get dissatisfied, and they either want to sell, and create their own shows, or at least work their way up the ladder to higher quality shows. Because if someone keeps working on lower quality shows, that's their resume and they'll be seen a certain way. And it's not impossible, but it can be challenging to break out of that cycle. So people are writing spec scripts to sell them, or to launch their career, or to take their current career up to the next level. And the reality, and I'm sorry to be a Debbie Downer or a Dave Downer, is that the vast majority of people who write original material are not going to achieve any of that. They're not going to sell their script, and they're not going to launch their career. And that's certainly not saying that when you write or finish your current spec script, I'm not saying it won't sell, and I'm not saying that it won't launch your career or take your career to the next level. I'm just saying for most writers, that's not the outcome that happens for them. And I want to explain why that's the case. There's two main reasons. The first main reason is that too many writers are writing the wrong kinds of scripts for the current marketplace. Perhaps the scripts they're writing were the right kind of scripts 3 or 5 years ago, but not for the current marketplace. And the second main reason is a writer is absolutely trying to write the right kind of script and not able to fully pull it off. And this is a absolutely unforgiving industry. You've got to hold two truths that are somewhat paradoxical, but they both exist, which is it is the best time and the easiest, well, when the pandemic is over, it will be the best time to be a writer and the easiest time to break into the business, and it will be the hardest time to break into the business. It'll be the easiest time because the demand for scripts will exceed the supply of those scripts. But it is such an incredibly high quality bar that you have to meet. So it's not that the industry is looking for scripts, it's looking for a very specific kind of script. So the industry is unforgiving. And when I was breaking into business in the very late 1990s, if you wrote a script that was 80% of the way there, you could launch a career, because the industry could say, you have so much potential, you got so close, now with our help, we can get you all the way. Not going to happen today. You got to be all the way there. So The first reason is heartbreaking. Writers who are writing the wrong kinds of scripts, because no matter how much time and energy they put into it, and no matter how talented they are, and doesn't matter how amazing the script is, it's not going to be successful. And I find that heartbreaking. The second reason I think is immensely frustrating for writers, which is they know the right kind of scripts to be writing. They just can't seem to consistently pull it off. And they probably know that, and they're not entirely sure what to do about it. And maybe they go work with someone, you know, a consultant, a mentor, and maybe that person can help them get that script further along, but the writer can't do it on their own the next time. And again, that can be immensely frustrating. So what I want to do today is I want to, first of all, make sure that when you leave here, you at least know the right kind of scripts to be writing. You know exactly what target you should be aiming for. And then I want to give you some information on what's required to fully hit that bullseye. And hopefully this information can help clarify some things for you, help focus your attention, and perhaps even help accelerate you down the learning curve. Sorry, I want to get a little hydration. So let's divide scripts into 3 broad categories. And you might want to take, I know I say you don't necessarily take notes, but if you have electronic or paper and pen, you might want to write this down. Category 1, we're going to call formula/paradigm. So if you've read writing books or taken writing classes or done other webinars, especially, you know, a few years ago, it's really likely that you've been exposed, and perhaps you've even written such a script. These are scripts that have preordained plot points. You know, there's a catalyst or an inciting incident. This is when it happens. Here's what you do in the act breaks. Here's what you do at the midpoint. You have an A story, a B story, a C story. Here's how you set them up and develop them, and here's how they all work together. That's a formula or a paradigm. In a sense, it's a recipe. You bring your own ingredients, you bring your characters, your dialogue, your emotion, but you are following a recipe or a paradigm or a formula. So that is one category of scripts. A second category of scripts we're going to call imitative/X with a twist. And so imitative would be talk to executives and say, are you getting any scripts that feel like Fleabag or remind you of Fleabag? And they will rant, because there's so many friggin' scripts out there that when you read them, you're like, yeah, this reminds me of Fleabag. It's not a direct ripoff, but it has that feeling. It has that kind of character. It has that kind of tone. It's like the writer consciously or unconsciously said, I love Fleabag, and I want to write my version of Fleabag. When The Office was super popular, I would bring in agents and managers and executives to my classes, and they would say, yeah, we're getting like 5 million scripts that remind us of The Office, or same was true of Breaking Bad or Russian Doll. Whenever there's that show that you know writers love, there's going to be a lot of people who write scripts, and they may not even be aware of it, where when you read their script, again, it's not a direct ripoff. But when you read the script, you're like, yeah, this feels like Walter, kind of like a version of Walter White. Or, yeah, this feels kind of like your version of Fleabag. X with a twist is a conscious decision to take a successful movie or TV show, do it with a twist. So when The Hangover was really popular, it's The Hangover, but with women. Or it's The Hangover, but with children. Or it's The Hangover in Disneyland. So it is something, and nobody imitates or does X with a twist for a failure. It's always going to be a highly successful TV show or movie. So it's like Seinfeld, but with this twist. So that is the first category is formula/paradigm. And the second category is imitative/something successful with a twist. We're going to group those together in the same category. Then there's a third and final category. And I hear agents and managers call this pitch perfect authentic, and I hear them call it pitch perfect original. So do keep in mind that the pitch perfect doesn't change. So that's really important. So you can call it pitch perfect authentic or pitch perfect original. Let's call it pitch perfect original. So a pitch perfect original script, let's start with original. When you, Fleabag as an example. So when that Spec script was written, if you had read it, the Fleabag character doesn't remind you of anybody. You read that and you're like, Fleabag is Fleabag. It's like an authentic, real character. It doesn't feel derivative, and it doesn't feel like, it's not based on characters you've seen. It's a real person. Just like the main character in Russian Doll, just like the Michael character in The Office, Piper in Orange is the New Black, Walter White, we can go on and on, Liz Lemon from 30 Rock. So an original character is not derivative, does not remind you of any other character. It is a wholly unique, original character. And the pitch perfect part is that you are just in love with following this character around. You are mesmerized by this character, and you just want to keep following this character or these characters around. And the story is also pitch perfect original. So the story is not formula or paradigm driven. Formula paradigm driven scripts feel generic. They feel homogenous. They're predictable. When you read the spec script for Fleabag or Breaking Bad or 30 Rock, it's not following the paradigms. It's not following the formulas. And it actually doesn't even feel like there was a writer structuring it. That's the magic of it. A pitch perfect original script is a magical experience because it feels like real characters doing what they would really do, saying what they would really say, and somehow the story is just captivating. It grabs your attention, it holds your attention, and it delivers you somewhere that exceeds your expectations. When you're done watching the pilot or the movie, it's almost like you wake up because you were just so all in watching it or reading it. So these are our three categories of scripts: formula / paradigm, imitative / something successful with a twist, and then thirdly, pitch perfect original. So again, before we answer what kind of scripts you should be writing, let's just look at our objectives. Why would you write a spec script? Well, one objective is to sell it. One is to get, if you don't have a career, to get you noticed, to get you meetings, to get people wanting to know you and work with you, and ideally to get representation. Or if you have representation, to get staffed on an existing show, or to get a feature assignment, or a writing sample that gets people to want to take pitch meetings with you and want to buy a pitch from you. So these are your objectives. So now, which scripts in these categories should you be writing? Let's quickly time travel in our imaginary time traveling DeLorean back 20 years ago. I think it's important to understand where the industry was, to understand where it is, to understand where it's going. So if you go back to year 2000 or so, or maybe a few years before that, you had the main buyers of scripts were the networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. And they were buying entirely scripts from the first two categories: formula, paradigm, or imitative, X with a twist. That's all they were buying, because they were making comfort food. They were making TV shows that they wanted to be watched by the most number of people, to have the highest ratings, so they could charge the most for their advertisements. So they wanted shows that most people liked, shows that didn't turn anybody off. They certainly didn't want a show that people hated. And they were making comfort food. And they knew what people liked. They knew after a long day, when people are at home, they're drinking a little bit of wine, they liked a feel-good comedy where it's family or work-based. There's a problem and it gets resolved at the end, and we're all much more similar than we are different. Hopeful, fun. They like whodunit, crime. Here's a red herring. Here's a red herring. Ah, that's the person that actually did it. That was an enjoyable comfort food. It's not memorable. It's not impactful, but it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's going out for burger and fries. It's comforting. And they're all making the same type shows with the same paradigms. What differentiated the shows was sometimes a high concept, but usually not. Usually it just came down to the star. People like Ted Danson. Let's give them comfort food with Ted Danson. people like this actor. Let's make comfort food and put this actor in. And they knew that no one loved their shows. People liked their shows, but you wouldn't change the channel because there was only 2 or 3 other channels and everyone's making comfort food and you like Ted Danson and you're already settled in. So you might as well just keep watching this show. So that's why back then, the books, the classes, the seminars, the film schools, they were teaching people how to write to a paradigm. They were teaching people how to write to a formula, because if you wanted to sell a script, that's exactly what you needed to do. Now, some of you might be saying, well, what about HBO? HBO was buying original material back then. And we all know the logo, or not the logo, the catchphrase. It's not TV, it's HBO. HBO could not be creating the same kind of shows that networks were creating, because why would you pay money to watch original shows that you could watch for free on the networks? So HBO was buying and making pitch perfect original shows. It's not TV, it's something extraordinary. It shows that you emotionally connect with, that matter to you. Sopranos, Sex and the City, these shows mattered to people. People had an authentic connection to these shows. It blew them away. It was unlike anything you could see on TV. These were pitch perfect original shows. But the HBO and Showtime were only buying those scripts from top A-list writers. So if you were not a top A-list writer, you could not sell a script to HBO or Showtime, no matter how great the script was. So 20 years ago, if you were smart, you were writing a portfolio of scripts. And just stay with me on this. I'm soon going to get to the current marketplace, but it's important that we finish the past and we understand the portfolio idea. If you were trying to break in the business 20 years ago and you were smart, you would have written 1 or 2 pitch perfect original scripts. You wouldn't have been able to sell them. HBO wasn't going to buy it from you if you were a new writer, and the networks weren't going to buy it from anybody. But you wrote it as a way to get attention, because that's your first job, is to break out of all of the noise, all of the competition, and to write a script. It's called a head-turning script. It turns people's heads. It's also called a script that has legs, which is when people read it, they're so blown away by it, they start telling all their friends in the industry, and suddenly everybody's reading the script and there's a buzz about it. And you would write 1 or 2 of those scripts, and that's the way that you would get meetings, the way you get representation. It would be a writing sample. No one's going to buy that script. You know no one's going to buy that script, but it's going to get people excited by you, and that's how you're going to break in the business, and that's how you're going to get staffed on a show. So for instance, when Matthew Weiner originally wrote Mad Men, no one was going to buy that script from him, but it got him all this buzz, all these meetings, including David Chase, who hired him onto Sopranos, where Matthew worked for many years, won multiple Emmys, and then when he was done, now he was a major writer, so AMC was willing to roll the dice with Mad Men. So you would write 1 or 2 pitch perfect original scripts as a writing sample, head turning, get you attention, get you noticed. You also would want to have written 1 or 2 formula, paradigm, or imitative, or X with a twist, the first 2 categories, so that when agents or managers met with you, you also had something they could go sell. And you also would want to write, if you want to be staffed on a TV show, you also needed to write a spec or 2 of existing TV shows. So if you want to be a comedy writer, you would write spec episodes of existing comedy shows, or existing drama shows if you want to be a drama writer, because your pitch perfect original script gets you representation. The representation uses your pitch perfect original script to introduce you to showrunners. Now, a showrunner says, wow, you're an amazing writer, but if I hire you, can you write in my voice? Can you write my characters? And you would say, or your agent or manager would say, yes, and we can prove it, because look, this writer has written 2 spec scripts of, you know, a hit comedy or drama. And when the showrunner read it, they'd say, wow, you nailed that show, that the way that show was written, you nailed those characters. I want to meet with you. So a bit exhausting, actually, 20 or so years ago, if you were smart, and not everyone was, but if you were smart, you were writing a portfolio of scripts. You were writing all of those 3 categories plus you were writing specs of existing shows. And in the movie industry, if you want to be working in the big summer movie industry, you'd be writing formula, paradigm, or X with a twist. And if you wanted to be writing in the award-winning fall movies, you'd be writing pitch perfect original. Okay. Now, in 2020, who's buying pitch perfect original scripts? And the answer is everybody. And not just cable companies and not just Netflix and Amazon, but also NBC, CBS, ABC. You know, The Good Place, as an example, that was an HBO show 7 years ago, 10 years ago. That was not a network show. So everybody's buying pitch perfect original scripts, and they are buying more of those than the other scripts. They are still buying formula and paradigm. They're still buying imitative or this with a twist, but primarily they're buying pitch perfect original. And there are many reasons. One reason is everyone's chasing the same demographic of 21 to 49, and we've all grown up or come of age with on-demand platforms. We've watched more TV than is medically advisable. We know what's original, and we know what's a reheat. And for the most part, most of us feel like Murder, She Wrote or CSI or any of these paradigm formula-driven scripts, that's what our parents watch. We've watched so much TV, and we have so much competition for our attention. There's so much entertainment available to us that for the most part, if we're going to watch TV, it's got to be something that matters to us. It's got to be something that we connect with on a deeper level. And so with the generation that matters from the TV industry's point of view, it's pitch perfect original. But even more importantly than that, the whole metric has changed. Used to be the highest ratings. Now it's follow through. There's just too much TV. Nobody could watch all of the TV that exists. And so what the metric for success is, what percentage of viewers who watch your first episode watch all your episodes? Which is to say, how committed are they to your show? And if that percentage isn't high enough, your show is not does not get picked up for a second or third season. It's all about follow through. Girls, an HBO show, didn't have huge numbers, but it had very high percent follow through. So they are looking for shows that people make an emotional connection to. And then the last point is that the whole industry has been disrupted, and all of the monopolistic walls have fallen. And everyone is moving towards these platforms, HBO Go or HBO Max and Netflix and Amazon and Hulu. Everyone's moving to these platforms. And what they need is a library of assets. And assets are shows that they own that matter to you, shows that mean something to you. So everybody is in a race. There's an arms race to develop and make as many pitch perfect original shows as possible. It's an arms race, and the writers create the missiles, which is to say it is our scripts that they are all chasing after. Now, the industry is buying formula, paradigm, or imitative, this with a twist, but they're not buying it from new writers. By and large, agents will tell you, unless you're an executive producer or above in a hit show in that space, no one's going to buy your paradigm-driven show. And if you were an executive producer or above, you better base your paradigm formula show on exciting source material. Otherwise, this is probably a no-go. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And just keep an eye on the clock. I won't go down that rabbit hole of why, but just accept that right now everything's flipped. It used to be if you were a newer writer, you had to be writing formula to sell it. Now you have to be writing pitch perfect original. I know so many agents and managers that just simply will not take anyone who's not writing pitch perfect original. That, if you want to sell a script, that's what you want to be writing. If you want to get representation or meetings, that's what you want to be writing. If you want to be invited to pitch, that's what you need to be writing. If you want to get staffed onto an existing show, showrunners are not reading sample scripts, spec scripts of existing shows. They are reading pitch perfect original material. Why are they doing it? Because, as many showrunners will say, our greatest nightmare is there's too many shows out there, and people are not continuing to watch my show. So I need my show to make an emotional impact on people. I need my show to matter. So I need writers that can write that way. And if you are an amazing writer, you can ape my voice. I'm not worried about that. So the good news is you don't have to write a portfolio of scripts. And the other good news is a fair amount of your competition, for a variety of reasons, are writing paradigm or formula or imitative or X with a twist scripts, because they see those shows getting made, they see those movies getting made. They just don't realize in the current marketplace, no one's going to buy their scripts because they don't have the cred and they haven't based it on source material probably. So if you want to be selling a script, if you want to be getting representation, if you want to be invited to pitch, if you want to get staffed onto a show or a feature assignment, or you want to take your current career to the next level, all roads lead to the same place: pitch perfect original scripts. That's the good news. You don't have to write a portfolio of scripts. You don't want to write a portfolio of scripts. What you want to write is 2 or 3 pitch perfect original scripts. The challenging part is when you look at our categories of scripts, these are the hardest scripts to write, or the hardest scripts to successfully pull off. And most writers cannot successfully pull these scripts off. And I want to tell you the main reason. The main reason that most writers can't successfully pull this off is every writer has sort of 2 modes that they work from, or 2 modes they could work from: the conceptual mode or the intuitive mode. And almost all writers are much stronger and spend much more of their time in one of those modes than the other. So writers who spend most of their time in the conceptual side, let's call them conceptual writers. And writers who spend most of their time on the intuitive side of things, let's call those intuitive writers. So most writers are either inherently conceptual or intuitive. And each group of writers approach writing from a very different perspective, and they have inherent strengths and inherent weaknesses. Conceptual writers work outside in. They tend to start with a concept, a theme, a story, a twist ending, a marketplace consideration. Oh, I think this would really work in the marketplace. Nobody's doing this kind of a thing. They start outside and then they work in, and then they start to find that they'll create the story, and then they'll start to find the characters to serve that story. Intuitive writers work inside out. They start with character, or they just start with something emotionally, authentically important that they have to be writing about, and they try to find a story. So conceptual writers tend to go outside in. They tend to start with story, concept, twist ending, theme, world. Intuitive writers almost always start with character or just something personal that they want to be exploring and writing about. Conceptual writers, the better conceptual writers, they're really good at big concepts. They're really good at having lots of interesting things happen in their story, a lot of funny set pieces or scary set pieces or dramatic set pieces. But their scripts almost always are not interesting enough, and their Achilles heel is character. For almost all conceptual writers, their characters are not authentic and compelling and original enough. They feel kind of like puppets. They kind of feel like they were created to serve the story because they were created to serve the story. The other thing that holds back most conceptual writers is that when you read their scripts, there's all these interesting things happening, but you don't really feel a lot. It doesn't really hit you at a deeper emotional level. 10 years ago, conceptual writers had a much better chance at a career because they could be doing paradigms and they could have these big concepts for movies, and they could be working in genres where you didn't really need great characters. You didn't really need that much of an emotional connection, big high concept comedies or thrillers or action scripts. But man, the industry has not been kind to these people, because now the industry loves big concepts, but they are demanding characters that people want to spend time with because there's just too much content. And without that, the show and even movies are getting ignored. And they need people to write in a way that can create an emotional attachment. It has to be meaningful to an audience. And that is something conceptual writers, no matter how hard they try, they just can't do it. I know a lot of writers, conceptual writers, who 5 or 6 years ago had great careers, and now they have no career. Now, intuitive writers, man, their characters are like real people. When you read their scripts, these are amazing people. And oh boy, the writer emotionally bleeds on the page. It's emotionally evocative. It's amazing characters. Because again, conceptual writers decide on their characters, design their characters, figure out their characters. Intuitive writers discover characters. For an intuitive writer, their characters are real people. That's why intuitive writers don't tend to be lonely when they write, because they're spending time with people they love, their characters. And they're really good at getting emotion on the page. And what most intuitive writers will do for the rest of their lives is create these amazing characters who are forever in search of a compelling story that they never find. Because the intuitive brain sucks at story structure. And it will always suck at story structure. And in fact, it abhors story structure and will always lead you away from story structure. The intuitive brain will always lead you to more dreamlike, emotionally evocative writing, which will mean you'll spend the rest of your life writing scripts that you love, but nobody else does. Because you don't need a compelling story to love your characters, but we do. Whereas conceptual writers can create complex, interesting stories, they just can't have characters that we care deeply enough. And, you know, there's a saying or a belief that the more you write, the better you'll become. And it's not true. What is true is in the beginning, you know, the very beginning, which I know all of you are beyond, but if you think back to when you first started writing, generally speaking, we all improve for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 scripts, because we all make dumb rookie mistakes and it gets pointed out to us. And over time we learn and we grow and our writing does improve. And then writers will hit a plateau that they'll stay on for the rest of their life. And the more they write, just the larger the pile of similarly flawed scripts are, because conceptual writers, what happens is and intuitive writers, they practice creative disintegration as opposed to creative integration. So creative integration is when I work with a writer, if they're primarily conceptual, then I force them to work from an intuitive space. I make them, let me step back. I'm sorry. I skipped an important point. I apologize. When we're writing, we're trying to write the best scripts possible. So what we do smartly is play to our strengths and hide our weaknesses. And what that means over time is our strengths get stronger and stronger and our weaknesses get weaker and weaker. And that's creative disintegration. So conceptual writers get stronger and stronger at their inherent strengths, but weaker in their inherent weaknesses. And the same is true of intuitive writers. So now to circle back, what creative integration says is like a tennis player. If you're great at your forehand, but you're weak at your backhand, you're going to try to play a tournament where you do as much forehand as possible. And if I'm your competitor, I'm going to try to make you play as much backhand as possible. Creative integration would say, go take 3 months, only do your backhand, don't do your forehand, and get your backhand as strong as your forehand. So now you have no weaknesses. So as a writer, if you're conceptual, it means training for 3 months on pure intuitive skill sets until you are intuitively as strong as you are conceptually. Or if you're an intuitive writer, it is to develop your conceptual side as strong as your intuitive side. And then learn how to integrate the two. And then that is what is absolutely required to write pitch perfect original. Because that original part comes from the intuitive side and the pitch perfect comes from the conceptual side. And it is only when both sides are equally strong and they know how to support and work in harmony with each other, that's required to write those magical scripts. So the main reason that most writers are not fully able to write pitch perfect original scripts, and often can kind of get half of it right, but not so much the other half, is because left to our own devices, when we write, we want to write the best possible scripts, which means knowingly or unknowingly playing to your strengths and hiding your weaknesses, which again is creative disintegration because it makes your strengths stronger and your weaknesses weaker. The single biggest investment any of you can make to give yourself not only the best possible chance of a career, but the best possible chance of the best possible career, a career that you actually would want and be fulfilling, is to figure out what your weaknesses are and then relentlessly train your weaknesses into strengths. So that is the single biggest investment that you can make, is in creative integration. And there's more information on that on my website, CoreyMandell.net. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but I want to go down a list of the key skills that are required to write pitch perfect original, because writing a pitch perfect original script can change your life. And if you can consistently write I don't know a single writer who consistently writes pitch perfect original scripts that doesn't have a career. And most of those writers are on track to having one hell of a career, a potential A-list career. So the key to all of this is to be able to consistently write pitch perfect original scripts. And creative integration, I've been training writers for over 13 years. And I've seen that creative integration is the first step. It is the fundamental foundation that everything else is built upon. But what I'd like to do is just run through, and I'll be fairly brief, which is not my strong suit, but I'll try to be fairly brief on these other really key skills that are required to write pitch perfect original. And it might seem a little overwhelming at first, but just know that each one of these skills, if you practice them in isolation, you can get better and better and better at it. It can take some time and energy to really master all of them, but come on, to write at the highest level and to really give yourself a chance of writing movies or TV shows that can get made and be beloved by many people, it's going to take for most people some time and training, but at least you'll have a roadmap. So when I talk to executives, and I'm like, what's the one thing you wish writers were better at? Or what's your main frustration in reading scripts? The main thing I hear is, well, it's like half of the writers are great with character and emotion, but they're not strong enough at story. The other half are great with story, but they're not strong enough at character or emotion. Why can't someone put it all together? So that's creative integration. Another thing you often hear is concept. In the current marketplace, concept is king, it's queen, it's everything. There's too much content. And so everything has to be driven through heightened concept. Too many writers have this mistaken idea that there's high concept and then there's small character-driven shows. Fleabag was a heightened concept. That writer, Phoebe, was really smart in how she heightened it. Marvelous Miss Maisel is a heightened concept. So clearly The Walking Dead is a big concept TV show, but all concepts need to be heightened. And you can take any concept that you are interested in, and that's what I would absolutely recommend. Start with something that matters to you, because if it doesn't matter to you, it's not going to matter to us. And then learn how to heighten it. You need heightened concepts. It's so many scripts will be submitted to a production company, and the powers that be will want to get a rundown of the concepts, and that will be their decision. That's what they'll use to decide what scripts they'll read or won't read. So it doesn't matter how amazing it is. If it's not a heightened concept, they probably won't look at it because there's too much content, and they need heightened concepts to stand out. Equal to that is an engine. I remember a few years ago, I was speaking at the Toronto Screenwriting Conference, and I was going to do a 90-minute presentation, for 1,000 people on how to set up, build, and launch an engine in a TV show. And, it was all set to come out and really explain that this is one of the biggest mistakes that writers make, is that they don't have an engine. And this is equally true for features, but I was mainly talking to TV writers. And there's no marketplace for a pilot script. People are buying a show. And a pilot script without a properly set up, built, and launched engine is not a show, it's a pilot. So I was all ready to come out on the warpath on this point, and the person before me was Nicole Clemens, who's the senior VP at FX. And so I was backstage getting ready to come on, and she was wrapping up, and so I was listening to her. She's just, so wickedly smart, such an amazing executive. And she was doing Q&A, and the last question she got, somebody said, is, what is the biggest mistake that you see at FX with writers, submitting pilots or pitches? And without hesitation, she said, the biggest mistake is it doesn't have an engine. Because if it doesn't have an engine, we can't buy it. And I was thinking, everyone's going to think this was a plant, that this was set up. It was just one of these things where the universe worked out, because she wrapped up, I came on stage, and I got to say, let me show you exactly how to create an engine. So heightened concept in the current marketplace and engines. And an engine also will make your feature script so much stronger. If you look at the feature scripts that are getting made, if you look at the ones that are winning awards, they're all built on engines. And it is completely non-negotiable in TV. Additional skill set: engaging essential context. So many times when I work with writers on their scripts, I'll ask them, tell me about your characters, and why do you love these characters, and describe these characters, and what's happening in the story, and why does it matter to you? And at the end of the day, what I end up telling the writer is, when you read your script, your feature or pilot script, the movie or TV show that plays to you, that what you are experiencing is so much stronger than what we're experiencing. And there are so many writers who write scripts that not very well received. And the writer's like, well, I guess I'm not good enough with characters, or I'm not good enough for this. And in a lot of cases, a big part of the problem is that they're not able to get what they're feeling to on the page and then off the page to the reader. And so what we read when we read their scripts, it's not all, we're not experiencing the story and the characters fully. So essential context is everything that the reader needs to know or experience to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and why they should care. And of course, it has to be delivered in an engaging way. You can't just have boring exposition or on-the-nose dialogue. So it's a really critical skill set that keeps a lot of super talented, dedicated writers from success, because their scripts are either missing essential context, so that the character and or the story, we're not experiencing it fully, and so we're passing. Or they get the context out in a boring way, and you can never bore the reader. So engaging essential context, that for a lot of writers is what stands between them and a career. Equally important would be compelling conflict. I find about 5% of writers naturally write in compelling conflict. They don't need to learn how to do it. Another 5% are really close. 90% of people need to learn how to do it. Compelling conflict, it's really it's the gasoline that drives your story. A lot of writers write in conflict. It's just not compelling conflict. Another skill set would be having relentless organic escalations. And I'm sorry if it's starting to be a little overwhelming, but you can go back and listen to the recording, and I'm just giving you the truth of what is required.
Hey, Corey.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of people asking, throwing in the questions. Can you explain a little bit what engine is?
I'd rather finish the list and then in the Q&A.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good.
So, if you are reading a script or watching a TV show or movie and you engage with the character and they're trying to accomplish something and it matters to you and there's meaningful stakes and it starts getting easier and easier and easier, you get bored. If it doesn't get easier, but it doesn't get harder, just stays at the same level, you start to get bored. If you care about the character, you care about what they're trying to accomplish, and it gets harder and harder and harder, that's what keeps you hooked. So stories are escalating, which is things are getting harder and more interesting, or they're stagnating, which is they're staying at the same level, or they're de-escalating, getting less and less hard, less and less interesting. A shark is always moving or it dies. Your scripts are always escalating or they die. But the escalations have to feel organic. They have to feel true to character, true to genre. So that is a skill set that, if practiced in isolation, is actually fairly easy to learn and to master in a few weeks if you practice always how to take a situation and how to escalate it. Just got a couple more, and then I'll get to questions in not too long. So I do appreciate your patience. Story design, which is, so you are looking to create stories that are compelling, entertaining, and engaging, but also meaningful, impactful. That's what makes this so hard, that in the current marketplace, generally speaking, just being entertaining and engaging is often not enough. It has to do that and underneath be impactful and meaningful and memorable, because, you know, there's shows that you watch and you're like, yeah, that was engaging and funny or dramatic or scary, but there are a lot of shows like that, and you're not loyal to those shows, and you often don't keep watching those shows. And the industry tracks all of this. What they know is that you have to have an emotional connection, for the most part, to keep watching. So what I find is that when a lot of writers start out, you know, they're trapped in an outline mentality, which is, okay, so I got to figure out this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and this happens. Figure out the events and the ordering of the events, and just hope and pray it all adds up to something deeper, and it never or rarely does. I've been so fortunate to work with the best showrunners and literally Academy Award winning screenwriters. And I learned so much from those people. And one of the things that's startling is they do story structure different than most writers. For the most part, they don't start with figuring out the events of their story and figuring out the events and the ordering of the events. They don't start that way. They start by figuring out their objectives. And then they find the events that accomplish those objectives. And that is story design. And I have writers sent to me from agents and managers who are so close, but story structure is what's holding them back. And most people make story structure so much harder than it has to be. Story design, which is understanding the objectives. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. It's figuring out what the objectives are and the experience that you want people to have, and then finding the compelling events that create those experiences. That's the secret to having both an engaging, compelling script that is also meaningful and impactful. And in training writers in story design, what they always say when they come out the other end is, now when I think about how to design my story structure, it is so much easier and faster and more successful. And I don't want to oversell it. Rarely does somebody say it's now easy. No, it's a challenge. You know, story design is a challenge. But when you can free yourself from the tyranny of figuring out, it's like figuring out this tree, this tree, this tree, and when you're at the tree level, you can't see the forest. Now, start with a forest. Start with the experience you want other people to have. Start with something that's meaningful to you, and then extrapolate out how to make it meaningful to other people. Then find the events, the compelling, entertaining, funny, dramatic, scary events that will create those experiences. And then you have a real chance at, when you put all of that together, creative integration, And along with creative integration, I didn't say it, but inherent in that is through that work comes compelling characters, heightened concept, story engine. So I'll soon get to Q&A, and I'll start with the story engine because I've been informed many people had a question on that. So story engine, engaging essential context, compelling conflict, relentless organic escalations, story design, and then through story design, it's learning how to have the best of both worlds, which is to have a script that on one level is compelling, engaging, entertaining all the way through, but also on a deeper level, it matters to people. It's meaningful. It's impactful. And just think about this. A lot of writers think that their objective is to get an agent or a manager out there advocating for them. And they are wrong. That is not the smart objective. The smart objective is not to get an agent or a manager out there advocating for you. Not in this marketplace. The smarter objective is to get an army of people out there advocating for you. And I see this happen, and I see what happened. And I was fortunate enough to have this happen to me. And that's why I was able to launch my career and sell something to Ridley Scott while I was still in film school. And I see this with my writers today. So somebody reads a script and it makes them laugh, or it scares them, or it's dramatic. They love the characters, and they're engaged all the way through. And they get to the end like, wow, that's a great writer. Maybe they buy that script. Maybe they want to meet that writer. Maybe they don't. They're impressed. But contrast that with they read a script, they love the characters, they're engaged all the way through, and it got under their skin. It matters to them. And maybe they don't even know why, but it had an impact. So that 2 days later, when they're meeting with another writer on a project, they're thinking about you and your script. When they're taking a shower, they're thinking about you and your script. When they're driving to work, when we're allowed to drive to work, they're thinking about you and your script. They will meet with you. And if they can't hire you, they will tell other people to hire you. I see that. They will tell showrunners, you must meet this person. They will tell producers. If they are emotionally impacted by your script, they will be upset that you don't have a career, and they will want you to have a career. And if you get enough people wanting you to have a career, you will get a career. And you might not only launch a career, you might launch a career at a much higher level than other people. So I understand that creative integration, heightened concept, story engine, engaging essential context, compelling conflict, relentless organic escalations, and story design. I get that might seem like a lot. But all of that combined will allow you to consistently write the kinds of scripts that will not only give you the best possible chance of a career, but the best possible chance of the best possible career. So before I get to Q&A, real quick commercial, and I'll keep this fairly brief. I created workshops, and I was doing it. So I'm sorry, let me step back. I was really fortunate to launch my career by selling a pitch to Ridley Scott when I was in film school. And for the next 10 years, I made my living as a feature film writer, sold pitches, sold original scripts, got hired to do rewrites, got hired to do production rewrites, pretty much did everything that you do as a feature film writer for 10 years. I was teaching along the way at UCLA in the film school. And then at some point, I decided to start my own workshop series because I just talking to so many producers, agents, and managers who would say there's some really smart teachers and smart classes and resources out there, but they don't know of anything that is really getting to the core of the problem for so many writers, this creative integration issue, really how to create engines. And so I decided to reverse engineer. Can I break these tools and skills into a way that I could teach them? And in the beginning, it was a lot of trial and error. And I had a lot of courageous students go through and really help me figure stuff out. I'm really proud of where we got to. There's a lot of great resources out there. ISA has amazing resources and, you know, connects people with industry pros. It has mentorship. It does a lot of amazing, and it's helped a lot of writers improve and have careers. And so ISA is one example. I believe that what I'm offering is unique in that I don't know of anyone who is training writers the way that we train writers. And I'm really proud of our success. And that's not just patting myself on the back, it's patting our writers on the back. Last year, we hit the 1,000 mark, which we've had writers working. We have over 1,000 writers on TV shows, which is insane. Last year, over 150 of our writers sold pitches or spec scripts. And we don't have we keep our classes small. We're not going for quantity, we're going for quality. So 150 is a pretty high percentage. I'm also really proud of we don't advertise. It's all referral. And I'm really proud of who refers. Agents and managers who don't refer into other classes, refer into our classes. And you could go on my website. I mean, we have multiple Academy Award winning screenwriters referring people into our class. We have current showrunners. We have HBO executives, FX executives, and such. So I'm proud of all that, and I'm proud of what we do in the workshops. So if you want to work with me and you really want to make an investment and go deep in really learning the skills to write a lifetime of the kinds of scripts that are most in demand, I know there's a lot of classes out there. There's a lot of teachers out there, a lot of really smart people out there. I'll throw my hat in the ring because I don't know of anyone who's doing what we're doing. And we're not the best fit for everybody. You know, if you want a class where you bring in a script and you learn some things and someone helps you make your script better, which makes a lot of sense, I don't want you in my class and you don't want to be in my class. I've taught those classes, and I know at the end you can help someone get a better script and you can help them become a little bit of a better writer, but you can't change their life as a writer. So I want the people who are coming in and say, I'm not trying to make my script better. I want to spend 2 months on this creative integration and these skill sets. I want to transform myself as a writer. I want to make an investment to become the best possible writer that I can be, and perhaps an even better writer than I knew I could be. That's who I'm looking for. And so my workshops aren't for everybody. If you're interested, go to my website, corymandell.net. We try to keep adding to keep up with demand. We have 2 extra summer sessions, but they're all sold out. So the next available sessions are in September, and we'll probably sell out in about 3 or 4 weeks, but there's certainly still seats in the September sessions. Right now, all of the workshops are online using real-time video conferencing. So any of you looking to make an investment to really take your talent level to the next level, and what we really focus on in the workshops is we don't want to be the teachers that can help you improve your script, but then you can't really do it without us. It's all about training you to be able to do it on your own. So if you're interested in that, go to the website, corymandell.net, give you the information. You can reach out to my assistant at corymandell.net for the information on the September workshops. So that's the commercial, pretty quick and painless. In terms of engines, it's an engine is what propels the TV show or movie. It has a place to go, and what a proper engine does is it organically creates a whole bunch of comedic, or if it's a comedic engine, or dramatic events and the potential for more events. So with an engine, when you finish the pilot, you see where this is going, and you see that it has so much potential, and you're excited for that, and you're excited to keep watching that show, or you're excited to buy that script. So for those that want to go deeper into engines, what I'll say is, historically, I say, look, to really break down what an engine is and to show you exactly how to do it takes me about 90 minutes to 2 hours. It's there's some moving pieces to it. The way that most writers learn to do it is they become writer's assistants or get staffed on a show, and they watch someone do it. Or they are mentored by a manager or a producer or a writer who understands how to do it, who helps teach them how to do it. Is it possible to watch a lot of TV shows and figure it out for yourself? I think it's possible, but I think it's hard to do, but certainly possible. What I would say for someone coming to me for that is to say, I teach that in my second workshop. So, and the first workshop is a prereq for the second workshop. So you are now have to be committed to 2 workshops. And in that second workshop, I will spend, 3 hours breaking down engines, how to do them, and then give you some case studies. Here's how they created the engine for Community. Here's how they did it for Barry. Here's how they did it for The Crown. Here's how they did it for Fleabag. The cool thing is, I've just recently created a site that has that on-demand content, and I'm going to put Story Engine on it in the next week or 2. So if you don't want to take the workshops, but you really want to focus on story engines, and get 2 or 3 hours of that, and with all those examples, for the first time, it'll be available to people who don't take the workshops. And if you're going to do that, and you want to save a little bit of money, on my website, CoreyMandell.net, if you sign up for my newsletter, we're going to be rolling out more and more content. And every time we roll out content, we always give everyone on the email list a substantial discount. So, like to take care of our community. So if you might be interested in Story Engine content, it's not there yet. It will be there in the next week or 2 as my schedule allows. And then, if you signed up for my newsletter, not only will you be notified, but you'll be offered a discount. Okay, so that's that question. I open to other questions.
This is from Alex Moreno. Professor Mandell, do you think the industry will be looking for lower budget scripts?
So first of all, Alex, I do not have a PhD. I have an MFA, so I am not a professor, but you made my mom proud by saying that. Is the industry going to be looking for lower budget scripts? Yeah, the industry is going to be looking for all budget scripts. But I think what might be behind your question, and I apologize if I'm wrong, Alex, but I do think some people think it's smart to write. I've heard people say, write lower budget scripts because it's going to be, if you're not yet a big established writer, it'll be easier to sell those and get those made. And agents and managers will say, that's a terrible idea. Do not do that. What they will say is, write the script that blows people away. Don't worry about the budget. Here's the reality. Your job in writing a script is that it's got to be exceptional and unique. And people got to be like, wow, I've never seen a script like this. I've never seen characters like this. I've never seen a writer writing voice like that. So I remember I was on a panel at somewhere, I won't mention where, and one expert was saying, write low budget, write low budget. And I was talking to an agent. I was having lunch with an agent a few days later, and they're like, wow, idiot, stop saying that. And he was talking about this script called Muppet Man. And Muppet Man, I think that's what it's called, is an inside look at the Muppets. And it starts with Kermit waking up with an erection and calling Miss Piggy and having a very inappropriate conversation. And it was just this amazing script. And it could never get bought because the writer didn't have the rights from the Hansons, and nobody could get the rights from the Hansons, no matter how much money a studio was willing to spend, because there is no way in the world the Hanson company was ever going to let a movie that just trashes the Muppets like this. It was an unmakeable script. But man, was it original and amazing, and everybody wanted to meet that writer. And that writer launched a major career, making high 6 figures on feature film assignments. You see this all the time. So write a script. Don't worry about the budget. Don't worry about marketability.
That's not your job. Your job is to launch a career. And the way to launch a career is, look, there's so many smart people out there saying, I want to be a writer, I want to be a writer. There's millions. And the industry's like, I don't care. We have walls to protect us from all of you. It's just, I don't care that you want to be a writer. I really don't. What I want is the truly exceptional writers, the writers who can write something that I haven't seen before and blows me away. And those writers I want to work with. So will the industry be buying low budget scripts? Sure. Will they be buying big budget scripts and everything in between? Yes, yes, and yes. But my advice to you, and this is just relaying what agents and managers say, is don't be thinking about gaming what you think you can sell. That's an amateur move. And by the way, Alex, that might not have been why you're asking the question, so I'm not trying to impugn your honor. But for everybody, write the script that blows people away. That is how you'll get a career. So that's the answer to that question.
He says, thank you. Okay, so feeding off of that question, Tristan is asking, say you have a pitch perfect original script. I've been submitting to competition after competition, but in this climate, where are the doors of opportunity for writers without connections? And then a follow-up another person wrote, where do we submit? How do we get our scripts out there if we don't have representation?
Great. Okay, so part of the puzzle is writing the kinds of scripts that can launch your career. The other part of the puzzle is how to get access, how to get people to read those scripts. The single biggest mistake that people make, and this isn't Corey talking, this is agents and managers, is that they over-focus on the second part and under-focus on the first part. And part of the problem, to be candid, is that there are people and companies out there who are saying, I will solve your access problem because that's what stands between you and a career. If you give me money, I will solve your access problem. And it's tragic because until someone is writing the right kind of scripts, and I'm talking, when I say pitch perfect original, I'm talking about it hits all of those benchmarks. It's a very unforgiving industry. Until somebody could do that, they don't need access and they don't want access because they will get blacklisted. When people read scripts that aren't where they need to be, generally speaking, the industry doesn't want to read any more scripts from that person. You usually get one chance. We'll give you one shot, and that's usually it. And that doesn't sound fair. Certainly doesn't sound compassionate. Don't get mad at me. I'm just relaying the truth. So I will answer your question, but I just, and by the way, Tristan, maybe you are absolutely writing pitch perfect original scripts. So here's some good news on this front. One of the things that I've started doing, I'm going to continue to do, is I'm creating a video series, and I'm putting it on YouTube, and it's Corey Mandell YouTube, and it's free. And it's a step-by-step process for getting a career. So, the first couple of videos you don't need to watch because it's what we covered in here. It's what's the right kind of script to be writing and what are the critical skill sets. And then there'll be a video on how to acquire those skill sets. Because my workshops is just one way, there are other ways of doing it. And so that'll be a video. The next video, so important, Tristan, is, okay, if you believe that you are writing the kinds of scripts that you need to be writing, if you are hitting the benchmarks, before you try to get access, you need to confirm. You need to confirm that you're writing those kinds of scripts. And I'm going to do an entire video on how to do that. Spoiler alert, I don't advise hiring a consultant or a mentor and having them tell you if your script is doing that or not, because that's not a good way to go. And by the way, I used to do script consultants. I don't offer it anymore except for my clients, but I used to do it. And even I would say, don't hire me to tell you if your script is ready. You need to find, there are ways to know if your script is ready or not, or if you are writing at the level you need to write at. There are ways to know, to confirm, and I'll do an entire video And then I will do an entire video on the right way to get people to read your script. If you have no representation, most people go about it the wrong ways. It's important that you go about it the right way. I had no representation. I was lucky enough to have someone teach me and show me the right way to go about it. And within 2 weeks, I had multiple agents wanting to represent me at all the major agencies. Now, I want to set expectations. I was incredibly lucky. So I'm not saying that when you are writing the right kind of scripts, if you go out and try to, if you know the right ways to get people to read your scripts, to get the right people to read your scripts, and also to get representation. I'm not saying if you know the right way to do it, just like me, in 2 weeks, you'll have an agent, and the next week you'll sell something to Ridley Scott. Everything fell in place to me. Everything fell in place for me incredibly quickly. And there was a lot of luck involved in that. But what I would say is, I don't know a single writer who is writing the right kinds of scripts, has confirmed that, and knows the right way to go out to interface with the industry to get the right people to read their scripts. I don't know a single person who does all three of those things who doesn't end up with representation in a career. It usually takes longer than 2 weeks. It could take 6 months. It could take a year. The problem is, and the reason you hear so many people say, oh, it's so hard to break in the business and it's so hard to have a career, is A, they are just writing the wrong kinds of scripts. B, they're trying to write the right kind of scripts, and they believe, and their writing group believes, and maybe even the consultant they hired is telling them that their script is ready, but it isn't. And it might be really close. It might be this close. But this can be the difference between almost a career and a career. Or thirdly, they are writing the right kinds of scripts, but they don't know the right way to interface with the industry, and they don't know the right way to get the right people to read their scripts. I was lucky early on to have a producer take me under his wing and really lay this out for me. So another thing that I'm doing, and just, you'll need to have a little bit of patience because I do it as my schedule allows, but I'm going to put all of that on videos on my YouTube channel, and I'll be free. It'll be free to everybody. So I know that a lot of you are really frustrated, and how do I get people to read my scripts, and how do I get people in the industry to even know I'm like around and that I have a voice. I get that. But it really, I would say, back up a step. And the first thing that you want to do is test your scripts and confirm that you're writing the kind of scripts that can launch your career. Because if you're not there yet, stop and figure out what you need to do to improve yourself as a writer to get your scripts to the level they need to be at. When you do that, and or if you are at that level, I can and I will do it, you know, and I'll spend as much time as it takes in the video. I will give some, the information that was given to me about just the right way and the smart way to interact with the industry, and what is not the right way and what are not the smart ways of doing it. So I will provide that information in more detail down the road.
So Michael is asking, can you go over what heightened concept means versus a normal concept?
The quick answer is, a heightened concept is that when you hear it, you get excited. There's something original and unique, but there's something that just, there's a visceral reaction to it. How you heighten the concept, it would take me 90 minutes to explain that. You know, I don't know if this is available, but I remember, you know, at UCLA, a class where David Chase came in, and it took him 6 months to figure out how to heighten the concept for The Sopranos. And I also have heard, again, I don't know, this was done in at the WGA, so I don't know if it's done in a recorded content, but Jenji Cohen talking about the process she went through to find a way to heighten the concept for Orange is the New Black to the point where she could sell it.
Lewis is asking about advice on writing pilots scripts for limited series. Can you talk a little bit about regular series versus limited series, and if you should be writing for a limited series, or should you go for the big picture?
So there's two parts to that, and I can answer the second part, and I might need a little more information. Sorry to be so annoying, Lewis, on what you mean by the difference in a pilot. But actually, what I want to answer the second part, and then I want to throw out, especially for those of you who've hung in here to the end, I want to throw out a very tangible piece of advice that I think might be helpful for those of you thinking about pilots. First, let me answer the second part, Lewis. We live, and when this effing pandemic is over, we're going to live in the platinum age of writing. And what's really cool about it, Lewis, is that as I talked about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it was all about syndication. So it was all about, they wanted TV shows, that could go 50 or more episodes. They wanted multi-years so they get to their big payday at the end, which is syndication. Well, that's completely been disrupted. Almost no shows go to syndication. That's not, because there's so much new content. There's very few shows that people, that a TV network is going to pay a lot of money to be able to syndicate that show, because there's so much new, exciting content out there. So I think last year there were, 2 shows that were sold into syndication, 2 shows out of 1 million shows. So what that means, Lewis, is that nowadays, it used to be, if you want to do TV, you got to do it in this form. But now what happens is you start with a story. You start with something that matters to you. You start with something that you want us to experience. And then you get to ask yourself, what is the best vehicle to achieve that? Is it 4 episodes and that's it? Is it 8 episodes or 10 episodes? Is it 2 years, like Fleabag? I know it was originally going to be 1 year, but then became 2 years and done. Or is it, 50 shows or 100 shows? So you get to start with what it is you want to be doing. And then you decide what would be the best vehicle for that. And the really exciting thing is what everyone's looking for is shows that matter, that can connect to people. And if the best way to do your story is 3 episodes and done, or 10 episodes and done, or 2 years, or 1 million episodes, there's a marketplace for that. So that's really exciting, Lewis. That's part of why this is the platinum age of writing, is that you get to write, you get to construct the show that best serves your story. Now you're asking about a pilot for a limited series versus, a multi-year show. And really pragmatically, it's not any different. There's 2 things that you have to do in a pilot. And it's why they're so hard to do, because you got to do both. You've got to create a pilot script that standalone delivers, which is to say, it has a story that grabs our attention, it holds our attention, and delivers us somewhere to an ending that exceeds our expectations. And it is a self-contained story. My dog is very excited by this. That's why he's barking. So it has to be a self-contained, satisfying story. At the same time, it is really the opening of your bigger story. So in a way, your pilot is like the first scene or the first 2 scenes of a feature script. So it's got to do 2 things simultaneously. And that's not easy. That's why I work every day with writers who are extremely successful staff writers who are not yet capable of creating original material that can sell. But they can work with a showrunner, and they are so talented that they can serve the showrunner's vision and the structural vessel, but they cannot yet quite pull it off on their own. Here's a tangible piece of advice I'd like to leave all of you with. And it's a real classic mistake that writers make until someone points it out to them. And maybe you already know this, but for those of you who don't, when I would work with a wider range of writers, including more inexperienced writers, they come in with a pilot and they'd want to know, does the pilot work? How can I improve my pilot? And then I start asking them questions about the show, the first season, the second season, and they can't really answer those questions they can't really answer those questions in a satisfying way. That's like somebody coming to me with the first 2 scenes of a feature. And they're saying, are these the right 2 scenes to start my feature with? Now I can read those 2 scenes and I can tell you if they grabbed my attention or held my attention. I can tell you what I thought of your writing in those first 2 scenes. But the question of, is this the right first 2 scenes for my script? I would say, well, where's your script go? You know, pitch me the rest of your script. And if the writer's like, well, I'm not entirely sure where it goes, well, then I have no idea if those are the right first 2 scenes. So what successful writers do is they figure out their show and they back into their pilot. And really what the pilot is, it's proof of concept. So you figure out what is really interesting about your limited series show. Why would people watch your limited series show, Lewis? There's so much else out there. What is unique and amazing and absolutely riveting about your limited series show or your multi-year show? It's the same question for limited series or multi-seasons. What is so unique, special, and riveting about your idea? And if you don't yet have an answer to that, you need to keep working until you get an answer to that. Then when you have an answer, what the right pilot does is it showcases that. It's called proof of concept. So if you're telling me, you know, this is what's so unique and riveting, it is these 2 characters, and specifically, it is the way they interact in this concept. You know, is a relationship between Walter White and Jesse, where Walter White is Jesse's protector and Jesse's devil. It is the odd couple of crystal meth production. That's what's going to be so fascinating. And watching this guy Breaking Bad, then you have to prove that in your pilot. When I'm done reading your pilot, I have to experience Walter and Jesse's relationship exactly the way you just pitched it. And everything that you said is so unique and special about your pilot, about your TV show, you've got to prove it in the pilot. And so many writers don't do that. When I was doing consultations with wider range of writers, a common thing that would happen is either I'd have a writer who just didn't have their show. Like when I would say, what is so unique and riveting about your show? And what is going to hold our interest for the first season? They don't have very good answers for that, in which case, then there's really not anything intelligent I could say about their pilot. I have no idea if it's the right pilot or not. They don't know. It's way too early in the process to commit it to a specific pilot. Or they have really great answers. Well, I'll tell you what's really unique about my show that we've never seen before. And while I think it's super riveting, here's why I love it. And here's why I hope other people will love it. And they answer it in a very clear, powerful way. And it's like, whoa, okay, that person, those are great answers. And those are going to be great answers in the room when the executive asks you. But you're not going to get into a room and you're not going to have executives ask you, because what you just told me is not properly showcased in the pilot. When someone finishes the pilot, they've got to know what is riveting and unique about your show, and they have to have experienced it. So a pilot really has to do 3 things. It has to be a self-contained, satisfying story. Not easy to do. It's got to be the right opening to launch your pilot. Not always easy to do. And this is the most important thing, it has to be proof of concept. So when I finish your pilot, I know what is unique and riveting about your show, and I experienced it in the strongest possible way. A pilot is a selling document. It's very unlikely that the pilot script you write is going to be the first episode of the TV show. It will probably be changed. So you're not writing the first episode of a TV show. You're writing a selling document that gets you into a room where you will pitch your show. You write the pilot and you pitch your show. And the writers that get that, and the writers who can showcase what is unique and powerful and compelling about their show in the pilot, those are the writers who are selling material. I've got students and former students who routinely sell 2, 3, 4 projects a year. There's insatiable demand, and will be more insatiable demand when production can start up in earnest. So in terms of what a pilot needs to do for a limited series or a multi-season, it's the same answers, Lewis.
And your job is to figure out what is unique and powerful about and riveting about your show, and then figure out what is the best form to do that in, limited series or not limited series. And you better have a good answer why. Because if you say, I see this as 8 episodes and done, and they say, okay, why? You better have a really good answer for that. And you need to write your pilot in a way that absolutely showcases what is unique and riveting about your show. And when you can consistently do that, Lewis, you go to the very front of the line of the writers that the industry wants to be working with. Thank you, the ISA, for doing this and for having me. I believe that one of the things that we are all realizing is how interconnected we all are and how important community is. And I, thank God for the ISA and not just the resources that the ISA provides, but the community. And one thing that I'll just end with is I'm a big believer in writer dates. And if you have never gone on a writer date, I would encourage you to do it, which is reach out to someone on the ISA, or it doesn't have to be the ISA. So easy to find like-minded people, but reach out to another writer that you don't know and invite them on a writer date. Set up a Skype or a Zoom session for half hour or an hour, have some questions, and why are you a writer? What do you love about writing? What do you hate about writing? What TV show do you most wish you could write on? And just, I really think one-on-one with someone you don't know, but is a writer, and getting to talk to writers, and do 2 or 3 writing dates a week. I encourage people to do it, before the pandemic, but especially during the pandemic. I really believe that community matters more than ever. And I really believe stories matter more than ever. And I really hope that all of you are just doing everything you can to write to the best of your ability, because we're all interconnected, if we like it or not. And if we're going, right now, here's what I said a new thing I'll leave you on. So there are so many scientists and doctors out there working 24/7 without sleep on vaccines and also medical treatments, but vaccines. And they know most of the vaccines won't work. And there are hundreds of vaccines in development because we only need 1 or 2 or 3 to work. We don't need all of them to cross the finish line. So just stay with me on this. There are scientists and doctors out there not sleeping, not seeing their family, working 24/7 on vaccines, knowing their vaccine might very well not cross the finish line, but that's okay. We only need 1 or 2 or 3 to cross the finish line. And when this pandemic is medically resolved, life will not go back to the way it was. Life will be different. And we're going to need stories of shared values and connection. We're going to need stories because we are so divided as a world. And politics divides us, and where we live divides us, and religion often divides us, but we all experience the same stories. Stories is one of the only institutions left that can unite us, that can create empathy and emotional understanding to people who are different from us. And there are going to be people who are, for quite a while, are going to be scared in large crowds and interacting with social people, socially. And so stories can help create that, can help emotionally heal us. And I truly believe that if we're going to survive socially as human beings, I think that dangerous times are going to come when this pandemic is over. And there are dangerous forces at rise in this world. And I believe that stories matter. And I would say, think of yourself as like one of those scientists. And I'm not saying you have to work 24/7 and not see your family. But here's the thing, be writing scripts that emotionally matter to you, that come from a deep, deep place. And then try to figure out how to make it interesting and compelling to other people. And the reality is a lot of those scripts won't get made, just like a lot of the vaccines won't get made. But some of them will, and they will help repair all of the damage that needs to be repaired. Stories matter. And I say you have a sacred responsibility, if you're a writer, to be committing yourself to writing the right kinds of stories. And we need some of these stories to cross the finish line, get sold, and get made. It's going to be imperative for the survival, the emotional, political survival of our species. Sorry to end on such a dramatic note, but these are dramatic times.
and I had to get that off my chest. So, okay, I'm done. I won't talk anymore.
I mean, what can we say anything else after that? That's so beautiful, so wonderful. It's so on point with what we really believe in as members of the ISA as well. We've had meetings about this for weeks now, about story mattering, and about, I mean, we've always been talking about the importance of community among writers. And you hear Felicity every time she's on here, she says that stories can change the world. So yeah, that was so beautiful, so wonderful. Molly, Shana, I'm going to finish up, but is there anything you want to touch on this before we wrap it up?
I just want to say thank you, Corey. This was fantastic. Really, really amazing information. I know everybody got a great deal out of it. Really appreciate your time. And that was a beautiful sentiment to end with. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So in the interest of community building, so we have a couple great events next week. Wednesday, so you've got your screenplay ready to go, but you want to make it your own. What's the next thing? How do you get money for it? So how to get an indie film financed and produced, and we'll have a great panel from an independent film that not only got produced, but it got distribution just recently. So that'll be very informative. That's Wednesday, the 17th at 6 o'clock LA time, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And then the next day, what really we started to put ourselves out there as community builders when we started to do Third Thursdays. And then we had, I don't know, several dozen of them across the world. And of course, this pandemic has prohibited us from being able to share spaces together, but that hasn't stopped us from doing virtual Third Thursdays, which will be just the next day, Thursday the 18th, also starting at 6 p.m. Thank you so much, Corey, Molly, Shana, everybody for coming out. And how many other people wrote down, as I did, the pilot is a selling document? I love that. That was, I don't know, that it just transforms in your mind how you approach it. I love that so much. These videos, this video specifically will come out probably in the next 2 days. And anybody that RSVP'd for it will get a link. But also we have videos going out all the time on YouTube and on our Pro Tips and Tricks page. Coming up soon, we'll have a couple videos with Justin Simeon, who was a tremendous speaker and had a really fun film at Sundance. I'm going to put the links to our YouTube and Pro Tips and Tricks page in the chat right now. But that is it. Thank you one more time for Corey. Round of applause. I remember in Chicago when we did TV Weekend, that when you finished your session and everybody came out of the theater, that it was like watching people get off a roller coaster. They felt so excited and like beyond words. I was trying to interview people and they're like, I have to digest this for a while, but that was awesome. And that's about all I could get out of people. So thank you again. And one last time, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see